You are listening to The Catholic Wire.
I had joined the Mormon church. I remember at the time saying to my husband, "Did you know about Joseph Smith and all these wives? Did you know he was stealing other men's wives?" That was it. This guy had shot 5 people, blew his head off in front of my husband. And because I actually remember one night having a conversation with my husband and saying to him, "Do you know, what would we do if this is all a big lie?" When we walked in to this Novus Ordo church, and when the Mass finished, I walked out and I said to my husband, "We are not going there because we'd be going straight to hell. I need to know, God. I'm now worried. I think this is a lie and I can't tell anybody, so I'm telling you. And if this is a lie, I'm going to need some miracle here to tell me that this is a lie."
In the last decades, many Catholics have experienced terrible moral persecution. Their faith, their traditions were taken away from the churches. Many have lived for many years ignorant of the deprivation they suffered. Some are still going through that painful and at once beautiful process of rediscovering the Catholic faith. For the encouragement of those still in that journey, faithful Catholics have shared with us their challenges, trials, and blessings. This is the story of their journey back to the faith. Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Back to the Faith. You are listening to The Catholic Wire, and this is your host, Father Cepeda. Today I am joined by a very special guest. We are recording on the day of the Pearl of Scotland, St. Margaret of Scotland, and my guest is Margaret from Scotland. Margaret, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Father. Yeah, I was just going to say that it's St. Margaret's feast day today. So, great day for it.
It's a big feast day over there, right?
Well, I would say yes, but not. I would like to say yes, but actually no, because the Novus Ordo, I don't believe, celebrate the feast day on this day, and we don't have a traditional priest in this country. So, really, there's only a few of us that actually celebrate it now, which is kind of sad.
The Novus Ordo changed it to November 16, right? I think.
That's right. That's correct.
Yeah, I was just reading that. But, hopefully one day you'll get a priest in there and you'll do this huge holiday with a bunch of...
Yes, of course.
Whatever it is.
Yeah. I hope so.
And it was a coincidence. It was a total... Well, it was providence, I should say, because I had not planned for this at all. Well, we had planned to have the interview, but I was just kind of putting it off. And then yesterday I was thinking to myself, I have to do this. If we don't do it, we'll never do it. Yeah. Because your son is helping us out to set up all the apps and everything to record this. And I said, okay, I'm going to send a message and I'm going to say, when can we do this? Today or tomorrow? And I sent the message and we put it together, and then it turns out it was on the day of St. Margaret of Scotland. So,
I know I said that too when Caleb said to me, I was like, oh, I can't believe it. That's St. Margaret's feast day. That's weird on the same day. But really, and I was also thinking because during this time, as you'll probably be aware, Father Clement Procopio died last Friday. God rest his soul. And it's actually really, I think the fact that you're doing this now is, I like you, I believe it's providence that this is happening now, because I have so much to be grateful to Father Procopio for.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, that is interesting. Really thankful to the Holy Ghost and to our Blessed Lord for this, for these blessings. So, your story is very interesting. I don't remember the whole detail of it. We heard some of it. Actually, I was not there when the bishop used it for a sermon. So I just heard like parts of it.
Didn't know the
But
bishop had used it for a sermon. Oh no.
I think he did. I mean, he didn't say like names,
Uh-huh.
but he said like, the gist of it. I believe.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
it was
So
very miraculous. Yeah.
yes. So I would like to begin, with a little bit of your background, your life story with your family. Where did you begin? And then maybe you could go into what led you step by step to the Catholic faith.
Okay. Well, as a family, as a married family, so once we married, my husband and I were married we were married civilly first here in the Mormon church in Glasgow here in Scotland. But then Mormons, when they get married, have to be what they call sealed in the temple, so that they're married for what's called time and all eternity. So we actually went to the temple in Salt Lake City and in Utah, and we were married there. We had to be married like 3 days later in Salt Lake City. And really our whole married life, we were Mormon. We raised all of our children in the Mormon faith. We have 12 children. So we raised our children. We had all of them whilst we were Mormon. We didn't actually come to the faith until 2007. So we'd had all of our children by that stage. We were very active members in the Mormon church. We had various callings there as it is. I served in the Relief Society, which is the women's organisation. I'd been Sunday school teacher. I worked with the youth. My husband was on the High Council. So we were active in our Mormon faith all of our married life. So it really, I think, took the hand of God to basically pluck us out of that. There's no way that we would have left unless God did something spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, that maybe sounds a bit presumptuous or boastful or whatever, but we were what would be considered good Mormons. We were good and faithful Mormons. We always kept our faith. We practiced it in our home. We had daily prayers. Mormons have what we call family home evenings on a Monday night. It's a time that Mormon families set aside, and you teach your family. You specifically, you teach them gospel principles. You would have an activity, a song. So you always did something together. And then the Mormon church was also, I don't know if this is something that you want to hear, but I guess maybe some people might find it a little bit interesting. But with the Mormon church, it's your whole life. If you're active in the church, it becomes like a real part of you and a part of your life. Like you have family home evening on a Monday night. Tuesday evenings are the evenings that are set aside for the youth. The Wednesday evenings would be priesthood meetings at the stake building, which is kind of like I guess like maybe a diocese type, so the way I can think of, because you had various wards and branches and they made up a stake. And so the priesthood meetings would be on Wednesday nights. Thursday nights would be the women's night for like Relief Society, as they called it. Fridays, there was always an activity, usually an activity in your ward. Saturdays was the stake activity where the whole of the stake got together. And then Sundays, Mormons at the time that we were members, it was 3 hours you were at church on a Sunday, because you had primary for the children lasted 2 hours, and then you had what was called the sacrament meeting. And it was like the priesthood and the Relief Society met separately for an hour, and then there was a Sunday school class. So it was like a huge, like it was every day of the week you had something. There was something to do with the church.
So Catholics, 2 hours at church or a sermon 45 hours long is not too much. Okay?
No.
Just kidding.
Definitely not.
But
People that complain about keeping their children quiet for Mass should try doing it for 3 hours on a Sunday.
yeah. You know, it's something that is one of the reasons why we're doing this project in the Catholic Wire, I guess, because that's how it's supposed to be in the Catholic life as well. And it was like that before. I mean, when there was a big structure in the church, and that's the thing, we're missing that structure right now. But when we had that structure, that the parish life was really your whole life, you know. Children would go to the Catholic school, out of school there would be activities, you know, and kind of the same thing. Maybe it wasn't some things were addressed by day, but you know, you had, for example, the Confraternity of Christian Mothers, you know, they would get together and do activities, parish activities. They would have the activities that would be to make charity, to help the poor. But it was a very, very active life as well. It's just, sadly, we're living right now under a persecution, but hopefully we can aim to get that back, at least locally, you know, when we have local parishes and priests living in a parish.
I would love to see that back. I think that's what we should be striving for as Catholics. We should be trying to do that. I think that's something that I've noticed, and maybe it's a remnant from Mormonism that's still there with us, is that, you know, Mormons, one of the Mormon presidents, you know, had this phrase that he coined that was every member a missionary, was what he said. And that was how it was viewed. Every member viewed themselves as a missionary. So your whole life was about sharing the gospel. It was sharing the gospel with, you know, everyone you came in contact with. So like everybody I knew that I was Mormon. Everyone knew that. They knew I was Mormon. They knew what my standards were. You know, Mormons have very strict standards. They have a very strict health code where, like, no tea, no coffee, you know, nothing like that. So everyone knew that, and everyone that you came in contact with, you would basically try and share the gospel with them, either through talking to them about it or just how you lived your life so that they could see that. You would invite people to church and things like that. I do have to say that's a huge thing that I kind of miss, and actually was one of the things that got me really excited when Caleb was talking about this, and that I thought, you know, I really want to do this, because if I'm not mistaken, did you not touch on this when you gave your sermon at your first Mass?
On what?
Touch on, like, basically being able to share the faith with other people.
Yes, that's because
I remember saying, "Oh my goodness, Dylan's going to make such a good priest," because I was so super excited when you were saying it, because I kind of missed. I'm not being critical. I don't want to sound so I'm criticising other priests. I'm not. There was just something clicked with me when I was listening to your sermon, and I thought, that is what we need. I think sometimes I think I worry that we maybe get too caught up in the worries of everything that went on at Vatican II, and when do we forget that there's so many people out there who need to hear what we have. They need to hear what we have, know what we have, and know the truth. And I think maybe we get a little bit scared to share that as Catholics. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe just because we're isolated, I feel like that. I don't know.
That part of me being a good priest, that's the part of the show that I cut off. No, just kidding. But you know, it's true. The thing is, okay, well, first to the audience, sorry if we're not going into the story. The conversation just got really interesting here. No, but it's true. The thing is, we look back a lot, and it's necessary to explain what has happened. But we also have to look forward and kind of fight for the good things. And I think that's very, very important. For example, what you're saying right now, we have to recover those things. And all those things that we see that were good, please understand this properly. There are some things that are good that people do, and they say, well, we did that in the Mormon church or in the Baptist church or whatever. Those things are Catholic. They are not, they don't belong to the false religions. They belong to Catholicism. And that was Catholic. And so we need to practice the things that the church always practiced and share those blessings. It's totally true. I was telling, well, this is, we'll say that for the later part of the show, but it's actually absolutely true. That's what we're trying to do. So let's keep going. So how many years were you in the Mormon church altogether?
Well, for me, I didn't convert. I converted to Mormonism, but I was actually thinking about all of this, after you'd asked me to do this. And I know I've said to my children before, I've told my children this, that I actually think that God has been in my life from the beginning, and I've not really been aware of it, that I was always destined, so to speak, to come here or to have the opportunity to be Catholic, because I was born in St. Joseph's Day. And when I was like a young girl, we stayed up, we called it in Glasgow, we stayed up a close. It was like a tenement building. And up our close, everybody else was Catholic. We were the only family that wasn't Catholic in the close. And we always had this priest, Father Donnelly, who came. And I used to be, as a child, I was absolutely terrified from him, because he would come in the close with his big booming voice and he would be shouting. We had also other Donnellys not related that lived below us, and he would shout out, maybe like, "Walter Donnelly, you weren't at Mass on Sunday." And he said this as he came up the stairs, but he was actually a very nice priest. One of those, this young boy, him and I was friends with his sister, but him and I were friends, and he would always say to me, "I'm going to be a priest when I grow up." And I said, "Oh, I'll just be a nun then," because we used to watch all the old Catholic movies. And he'd be like, "No, I can't be a nun, you're not Catholic." And I said, "Oh, well, but I will be a nun." Well, he grew up to be a priest. He did become a priest. Wow. But I also, as I said, I was born in St. Joseph's Day, but my mum had wanted to call me Joseph, Josephine rather, call me Josephine, because my grandfather, who had died just before I was born, he had died in the December, and apparently when I was born I looked like him. They wanted to call me Josephine after him, and my father, I might add, was a Mason, refused to call me that. He wouldn't give me that name. So when he registered my birth, he called me Margaret and said that I wasn't getting called Josephine because I was born in St. Joseph's Day and that was a Catholic name. So I wasn't getting Josephine. So I didn't get that name. But when we have an old tradition in Scotland, when a baby is being baptised or being christened, they used to have what they called, made up as a christening piece. We have lots of old customs in Scotland, but they would make up a christening piece, and what this christening piece would be like, you had a biscuit and a coin, there was a piece of money and like something like that. And if you had a baby girl, it was wrapped up in a white cloth, and if you had a baby girl, it was given to the first male you met as soon as you took the child out the house. Or if you had a boy, it was given to the first female. And I guess it was superstition, it was supposed to bring them luck or whatever. And so that's what you did. So when my mum and dad made up my christening piece and they took me out when I was going to be christened, I was going to be baptised, and the first person they met was the local priest who got my christening piece and gave me a blessing and blessed me that I would be Catholic.
Oh, wow.
But I wasn't Catholic then, and I was obviously christened in the Church of Scotland. But looking back on it, I can see, when I look back on things now, there were lots and lots of steps along the way that I can see that God's hand was in it. And so he obviously knew the right time, And so I can be content with that he obviously knew the right time. As for my husband, Robert was Mormon all his life. He served Mormons when they turn 19. The boys usually go and serve a 2-year mission for the Mormon church, where they can be sent anywhere in the world, and they're just sent to go and preach, knocking on doors, you know, the missionaries that Mormon missionaries you usually see in suits. So my husband was sent on a mission and was sent to London. And by the time he came back, his mission, I had joined the Mormon church, and I joined in my teens. I had met like that missionaries knocking on the door and whatnot, and I'd become Mormon, even though I went to the Church of Scotland. I mean, I did go to church. I was religious all of my life. I used to, as a wee girl, I was the only one in my family that went to church. I went to church on my own. I walked miles to get to a church, but I always was drawn to God, and I always went to, I did always go to church. Then the Mormon missionaries came round, and I kind of liked what they said, and it was actually quite difficult for me to join the Mormon church. I kind of felt a little bit weary about it, and I was very active in the church I was in. I took Sunday school. I took like the Brownies and Guides, which is kind of like the Scouts Association for Girls. So I took Sunday school. I had a youth group, and so I walked away from all of that to become Mormon. And my mum was heartbroken. She thought it was a cult and it was terrible. I should have probably listened to her at the time. But I didn't, and joined the Mormon church. Robert came home as mission, and we got married shortly after he came home as mission.
That makes me think of my father in Mexico. You have a lot of missionaries from the Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah.
And they'll come, it's kind of funny. I don't know why they do this, but they always send, Mexican people, they have their Mexican look, they're short, brown-skinned and black hair. They always send a blonde guy with the Mexican guy. For some reason, you always see like the Mexican guy and then a blonde guy that is like, this guy's not from here. And they always send them like that. And they would always come to my house, and my father would, they tell you as Catholics, you're supposed to dismiss them. And my dad would do one of two things. He would either tell them, oh, yes, I'm interested in all your books, give me all of them. And he would take like a lot of their books, obviously not to read them, but just to get rid of them. Yeah. And sometimes he would actually invite them in and argue with them.
Yeah.
And it was, oh boy, I mean, poor people, they got it bad. I mean, because my dad he was trained to argue. He was a college teacher, so they would come in and they would just start arguing, and the guys were just like stumbling all over the place, and they couldn't wait to get out. They would say, oh, okay, sir, we have to go now. No, stay longer. Come on, we're gonna talk. And he would keep them like all day. But anyways, it was just funny. So you got married?
So we got married, and we got married in the Mormon temple in Salt Lake, and then came back and really lived our lives as good Mormons. As I said, we have 12 children. Mormons have a large family as well. They believe in multiplying, replenish the earth, and so that's what we did. I mean, Mormon mums they're usually known as Molly Mormons, tend to stay at home. I didn't stay at home, which wasn't a good thing. But in the Mormon church, it was a case of not very many Mormons, although I say a lot have big families. Here in Scotland, they didn't. Most Mormons even only had like a few children for financial reasons. And a lot of people did make that decision for financial reasons. And, I weighed it up and decided, well, it wasn't, this shows my kind of logic. I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but I figured it wasn't a commandment to stay at home. It was recommended to stay at home, but it was a commandment to multiply and replenish the earth. So I had the children and had to help work to support them. So I was really blessed, and I opened a business with a friend of mine, and I ran children's nurseries, like daycare centres.
Okay.
And so that allowed me, like, every time I had a baby and I would breastfeed and take the baby into all sorts of meetings, because I ran nurseries, and I opened up nurseries for universities, for colleges, for hospitals and things like that. So I was actually kind of just, I guess, maybe good at my job. I didn't like it. All I wanted to do was be at home with my children. And then when I was pregnant with Saoirse, things, I don't know, I guess you could say maybe I was getting unsettled. I was really, really unsettled. My business partner had died a good few years ago. She had died when she was only 29. And so I had run this business myself for a number of years, and I just didn't like the way things were going. Things were changing here in Scotland. We brought in a curriculum. I didn't agree with the curriculum. A lot of the, even politically correct things were coming in, and I was fighting with Care Commission all the time, who are a regulating body. I would refuse to change things, and so it wasn't right. So I did the only thing I could do, which was get on my knees and pray and say, look, I really, Heavenly Father, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I can't go with these changes, and I can't do this. So I guess you maybe could say I made the mistake of asking him to, like, just find a way out of this. I need a way out. I need to just be at home. I need to be at home now. I've done my part, and I need to be at home. And when I say it was a mistake, my husband was a serving police officer, and he had basically a breakdown. He had attended a shooting in Glasgow, and he was first on the scene. He had been a plainclothes officer. He had heard the gunshots. Now, we don't have guns in Scotland, so there are very, very few gun crimes here ever. We have stabbings. We don't have gun crimes. So he was first officer on the scene as it was all happening. So he ended up here. At that time they're still not very good with PTSD or anything like that in the police service here. And basically what happened was, it was a shooting. They came and said, all right, okay, that's great, Bob. Thanks, you guys just get up the road now, and just get up the road, you'll be fine. And so that was it. This guy had shot, I think it was something like 5 people, blew his head off in front of my husband, and that was it. He was just saying, away you go, So he ended up having this huge breakdown and suffered really badly from post-traumatic stress disorder. And so our whole lives in an instant fell apart, absolutely fell apart. So that was my get out. I had to be home to be with him. So I literally had to, like, walk away from my business, just found somebody that would take it and come back at home. So we were having a really tough year. But just prior to this happening, I had read a book that someone had brought out. Now, Mormons, this, I guess, is back to, what we were saying earlier. Same as Catholics, you wouldn't be encouraged to go and read anti-Mormon books. So really, unless it was a Mormon book, you wouldn't read it. And so I read this Mormon book that I had purchased from Deseret Book, and it was called Joseph Smith, A Rough Stone Rolling. And I'd got this book and read it and thought, I remember at the time saying to my husband, did you know about Joseph Smith and all these wives? Did you know he was stealing other men's wives? And I was so horrified. I knew about polygamy, and I knew polygamy from the church's view. But suddenly it was this church historian that had written this book, and it was a warts and all book about the Mormon church. What we didn't know here in Scotland was that at this time the internet had taken off and things were being released about the Mormon church, things were being discovered in the internet, but we didn't know any of that here in Scotland. We were kind of isolated from it all. And so I had read this book and I was like, well, that's not good. And I had gone back and actually, after I'd read it, I'd spoken to my bishop and said, look, I have some concerns about this book. And, oh, no, can't discuss that, can't talk about it. And so I thought, that's like strange, I'm not getting any answers here. And then I had raised it a couple of times in lessons that I was given, and I was shut down. I was called to the bishop's office because of things that I had said. And I was like, but it's in this book, Bishop, I told you this. And so anyway, I agreed to, like, right, I wouldn't say anything else about this book and I wouldn't share it with anyone, even though it was a church book. And that was fine. Didn't think it, well, I did think more on it because I actually remember one night having a conversation with my husband and saying to him, do you know, what would we do if this is all a big lie? And he's like, what? What's a lie? And I said, what if the church is a lie? What if it's a lie? And what if Satan's having all these Mormons do all this temple work? Because Mormons do a lot of work in the temple for the dead. But again, you'll recognise all these things are just exactly like we said. They're all Catholic things that have been twisted by the Mormon church. But if you don't know Catholicism, you don't know that. So you think the Mormon church is, you know, the inventor of them, so to speak. And so they do baptisms for the dead, and they do endowment works for the dead, and they do marriages for the dead. All of these things happen in a Mormon temple. And
now that is not Catholic for sure.
No, that's not. I'm thinking more. It is the distortion of the praying for the dead. It's taking it further and making it ridiculous, really. I mean, now I can look at it and I can see it that way. But you can't, when you're in it, you can't see it. But suddenly, in me, something that night had twigged, and I had said to my husband, what if Satan was having all of us waste all of our time and spend all this time in the temple? And what if it's a lie and it's taking us away from God? We think we're going to God. What if it's taking us away from God? And he's like, don't be so ridiculous. Don't be ridiculous. But for some reason, I couldn't shake that. I could not shake that off. What if it's a lie? So again, I did the only thing I've ever known how to do in life. And I got down on my knees and I prayed. And I asked God to tell me if it was a lie. Like we had always, as Mormons, Mormon missionaries will teach you, go and ask God, like it says in James, if these things be true, and you'll pray and you'll ask God if they're true, and that's what you've always done. Well, I didn't. I did the opposite, and I said, I need to know, God. I'm now worried. I think this is a lie, and I can't tell anybody, so I'm telling you. And if this is a lie, I'm going to need some miracle here to tell me that this is a lie. Because otherwise I'm never going to believe it. But I'm scared. And for the first time in my life, that's how I felt. I was scared. And everybody had dismissed me. The church had dismissed me. You know, my husband was saying, don't be ridiculous. And so I was really in a state of panic. And that night, again, I'm going to sound like a crazy person here, but since I've been a young girl, since whenever I can remember, I've always had dreams. I would dream of things and they would happen. And sometimes I would dream of things and I would tell, like, you know, my mum, I dreamt this, and then it would happen. And I didn't think anything of it. My mum had always just said, well, you know, maybe God's sending you as a warning or whatever. And so it wasn't a big thing. It just happened and I got to expect that would happen, and didn't think anything of it unless I was ever watching anything out for my family. always, since I've been a wee girl, and my gran was the same, I guess you would say, like, I could see people that were dead or whatever, but I was always very conscious of, like fortune tellers and that kind of thing, that these things are bad. And so I didn't ever talk about it to anyone because I was scared, what if this is from the devil? Because I've always, as I said, I would go to church myself as a child. So I always kind of felt close to God. So it wasn't a big feature or part of my life, but it's always been there. But that night, I dreamt and I saw my dad. And my dad was talking, but this time my dad had died. And my dad said, stop worrying and just go to the church in the mountain. You're right. It's not true. And I thought, what?
Your dad said that?
My dad can't tell me this, and anyway,
So your dad said in the dream, go to the church in the mountain. You're right. It's not true.
Right.
Okay.
And so I thought, what is going on here? Well, I continued to have a dream on a regular basis where I just had this dream and all I knew was there was some church on the mountain somewhere and that's where I was to go. And then within that same year, it was a very difficult time because my husband was, it was clear, I mean, my husband just couldn't function at that time. He couldn't function at all. And the police force were excellent. The actual police officers were excellent. They came out to visit him at home and they said, no, look, he's never going to go back to work. He's got, this is the worst post-traumatic stress we've ever seen. He can't go near the workplace. He's going to have to be like medically retired. But no one in Scotland at that time had ever been medically retired for PTSD. So if they retired him, it was going to open a whole can of worms. So it was a year-long fight, basically, in order to get him retired. So we were having a difficult time everywhere. So I went to the bishop and explained to the bishop, like, my husband's he's serving in the High Council, but it's not working. He's struggling to speak and things. And they were absolutely no help whatsoever. And I thought, this is weird, because the Mormon Church have got this great thing in place and, everybody looks after everybody. And we had been there our whole lives. And suddenly it just felt like everything was it had been a new bishop that we'd gotten and everything was falling apart. They put a new building in. And then this dream had been going on for the best part of a year. And our church had put a new big extension onto our building. They were expanding. They were making us into a ward. We'd only been a branch, so they were making it bigger. And I had this dream this night that the foundations of the church were falling down. I had to get my children out. And It was so real. And I thought, I have to warn the bishop. They're blessing the building tomorrow. I have to warn the bishop. So I went to the bishop and I said, I feel embarrassed about it now, but I went to the bishop and I said to him, I have to speak to you, Bishop. Bishop, you can't get this building blessed. The building's going to collapse. There's something wrong with the foundations. I can't let my children in here. I've told my children they can't come today. The kids didn't know what was going on, right? They didn't know what was going on. And I said, they can't come. The building's going to collapse. There's something wrong with the foundations. And he was like, that, don't be ridiculous. You're being absolutely ridiculous. The building's getting blessed today. And then my husband came in, had an altercation with the bishop's wife over something. The bishop went crazy, told my husband, you can't come to this church when you're on medication like this. You shouldn't be here. You can't come. And it was a whole big, what we would call a big stushy. And we walked away and I said to my husband, well, it was just a nightmare. What then transpired, I won't even go into because it was just all a big nightmare. I think we both realised in that moment something bigger than us is happening here and this is not right. And so I said to my husband, it really is time for me to find this church in the mountains. I don't know what we're going to do, but we can't go there. We can't go there. We cannot go there. And so my husband said, well, you know, I've always had a hankering to be Catholic.
Oh, wow.
What? You know, like, what? Just because you support Celtic? You know, because in Glasgow, where we live, there are 2 football teams, and it's everything. There is Rangers and there are Celtic. And up until fairly recently, Rangers would not employ or would not take to play for them a Catholic. They were the Protestant team. They're still kind of thought of that way. And Celtic were founded by a Catholic brother. That's how the football team in 1888, I believe it was, were founded by this Catholic brother. So they've always had a history of Catholicism. And so my husband happened to be a Celtic supporter.
So what you're saying is that soccer is the best tool for conversion, yes. Probably.
Yes, for sure. Yes, definitely. So I thought, I've never heard this before. So I said, so we decided that we would go. It turned out to be Palm Sunday, that we would go to the local Catholic church. So in we walked to the Catholic church with 12 children in tow. You can imagine the priest's face. Yeah. When we walked in to this Novus Ordo church, and when it finished, when the Mass finished, I walked out and I said to my husband, we are not going there because we'd be going straight to hell. And the children were like that. Mum, you can't make us come here. We can't come here. We can't come here. And I said to my husband, there's no way I can't come. There's absolutely no way I can come here. I just can't. I can't do this.
Was there anything in particular that struck you as not right?
Well, I don't know if you want to hear it. Yeah, well, it was like during Lent, obviously. And the priest that day when he was giving his sermon had said, well, we're getting close to the end of Lent. Can't wait till Lent's over and I can go and have a swally after Mass. And I thought, what is he saying? Right? Now, you have to remember, at this time, we're Mormons still. So Mormons don't drink alcohol. A swally is I can't wait to go and have an alcoholic drink after Mass, right? And I was like, what? There was no reverence whatsoever. It was noisy. It was just like, it was just awful. I think all I can remember was the priest saying that and the noise, and people talking everywhere and walking everywhere. And I had never in my life been in a church that was noisy, because there's a lot of children in Mormon church, but reverence is a huge thing. Reverence is a huge thing. And so it was so irreverent. I just couldn't do it. And my husband said, well, I would quite like to go. And I said, well, I can't do that. So I came home that night and I got on my knees. I was crying because in my whole married life, my husband and I was going to say we'd never disagreed about anything. I think he would kind of like that. We've had loads of disagreements, but we've never disagreed on. We've never, ever disagreed on the big things. Never. Like, nothing like that. So I was in just a state of absolute distress, absolute distress. So I literally that night spent my whole night on my knees praying, crying, praying, begging God, and just saying, look, actually, I feel like I must be thick as mince here, God. In other words, I must be really stupid. I'm so stupid. I don't know what you're trying to tell me. I don't know where this church is. I don't know what you mean. You're actually going to have to slap me in the face with it or something, because I don't know. And my children are all asking me what we're going to do. They want to go to church. They actually wanted to go to church. We had raised them that way. And here we were having this crisis of faith. They'd only not been to church 1 week, and it was a nightmare for them. And so then, I don't know what happened, just in the morning, it was just like I got up and my face was a mess, and my husband was like, what on earth is wrong with you? And I said, we need to go to Los Angeles. And he said, what? I said, I don't know why. We need to go to Los Angeles.
We will continue Margaret's story on the next episode. On the next episode of Back to the Faith.
Got down on my knees and prayed and said, right, God, this is it. You know, I have not found the church, and I don't know what else to do. So really, I said it the last time, but unless you slap me in the face with it, I'll need to take the children and we'll just go back to Mormon church. We'll just go back. I'll just take them back. Then he's telling me what he believed, and I says, well, you can't believe that, because I believe that and I'm Mormon, and you're not Mormon dressed like that. And he said, no, I'm Catholic. Mm-hmm. And my husband and I knelt down, and the two of us actually had like tears streaming down our faces. What's wrong? What's wrong? Are you Catholic? And I said, no, I'm Mormon and I'm lost.
Thank you for listening to The Catholic Wire. If you have found this show helpful, please say a prayer for all our collaborators. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels and share with your friends. For questions and comments, you may contact us at thecatholicwire.org.